And it's really important to see people like where they are and to acknowledge them where they are, whatever they're feeling and experiencing, and then come to that common ground. And that's essentially what we do in our conversations, is getting to know somebody and getting to
what we have not framed appropriately at a macro level for the collective to really grasp is that if you're doing well and I'm doing well, we are collectively doing better.
This is More Than Therapy. And welcome to another episode of More Than Therapy. Today, we have my good compadres, Keith and Rodney, for the More in Common podcast, which I was featured on. And actually, my episode dropped on July 15th. Keith, Rodney, please tell the listening audience about your wonderful podcast.
Go for it, Rodney.
What's happening? I'm Rodney. Appreciate that, Felipe. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite. The More in Common podcast, we are about anchoring people in compassionate conversation, anchoring people in compassion. And the podcast it started out as our social experiment to kind of prove out that we have more in common than that which divides us, and to prove that it's possible, and not just possible, but beneficial to have conversations with people with disparate points of view and to get to know them versus what they think or what they did, like who they voted for, or just getting to actually know who they are, to have some context. And it's turned into just really this beautiful experience where I've learned so much. I won't speak for Keith. I'll let him say what he's gotten out of it, but I've just learned a lot. I've grown a lot. It turns out to be the thing that I needed, and it's grown into a consulting practice that Keith and I are executing on. That's More in Common.
Yeah, it's been this amazing transformation into the world of what compassion looks like. Like, we're not a debate show, we're not a shame show, we're if we disagree, let's navigate that in a peaceful way. And it's funny because of the space of compassion that we live in. And your episode embodies compassion and what it looks like in a practical way.
That you do specifically.
Yeah, you do specifically. That's how you live your life. This idea that there are so many times where we actually disagree with the guest. And if you listen back to it, you would never know. Right. And we actually come to a space of, we're just having a conversation about a thing. And I think that's cool. I agree with Rodney. 130 episodes. We've had Kristen Bell. We've had Catherine Hahn. We've had Dr. Dolly Cho, Dr. Donald Grant. We've had we've had Felipe Blue. We've had some amazing people on our podcast. And that's been kind of a cool side thing. You just get to meet some people you would never think you would ever meet in your life. So,
because we never thought we would interview stars. So we just thought we were going to talk to regular. Can we cuss?
Yes, you can cuss this. You know what I'm saying? I believe in free nature, free will, because cussing is just an extension of language. You know what I'm saying? And it's not that we're cussing you. It's just an added additional, a little sprinkle on the conversation. You know what I mean?
I just wanted to respect your space and what you're giving us.
We would expect nothing else. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
I was going to say, we just thought we were going to interview regular ass people, just like us. And it turns out all the stars that we've interviewed are regular ass people. And they just happen to have a profile. And that's been fun. It was actually this project, this idea was born out of Keith and I debating on Kaepernick kneeling. And it's just what we thought it would be. We thought we would be sitting and debating with people and teaching people how to debate. And then we just kind of naturally let it evolve into what it is. And it's getting to know people. That's what we do.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And y'all do a very great job. Like you said, 131 episodes in. That's dedication like I don't know what, especially regarding your format and the message. You know what I'm saying? The guests that come on the store and give their story, just the willingness to do that, and y'all make it so easy. I mean, y'all are some of the most kind-hearted people that I've ever sat across from. And one day, when this world changes into such a way where we can do this again, I would love to sit down with y'all and have some coffee and some tea or something. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Amen to that, without a doubt. Yes. Thank you for those words, by the way. Much
appreciate that.
And your friendship, to me, your friendship is just an amazing venture in itself. People probably say, that's not so remarkable. But you got to think, I mean, you live in my last 10, 15 years here in the South, so we don't see friendships like yours often. Tell me about your friendship, your compadreism. It's just a wonderful testament of what should be and what can be, especially during these daunting times.
It's funny.
I'm gonna take it, Keith. I'm gonna go first because
you're gonna say what I'm gonna say, so it's all good.
You just hit on like the thing. Like that's what More in Common really is. And our mission underneath the mission, or the real thing we're trying to do, is help people have what we have. Like we've had a 19-year friendship that has almost from day one been about being able to disagree about everything. I'm talking about everything and still be friends. And we don't think we're special in that. Like anybody could do that if they hold some respect for other people. And our friendship has been, I mean, it's had its ups and downs, 19 years, obviously. But it is the thing that makes this whole enterprise and endeavor run. And for me, I kind of look at it like one of the great friendships, like that movie Master and Commander with Russell Crowe and
I was thinking Chewie and Chewbacca, Han Solo and Chewbacca.
There you go.
Han Solo, Chewbacca.
That's it.
Yep, Keith does a good Chewbacca.
Yeah,
Anakin and Ben Solo. I mean, Ben Kenobi. You know what I'm saying?
No, and it's funny because you say most people would say that's not unique or so, and like that.
I mean, some would say that, but here in North Carolina, South Carolina,
like
Mississippi, Georgia,
we said that. We've said that for 18 years. Like, so we have a brand coach that we've been working with. Shout out to Rich Keller and his one word. But Rich has told us since we started working with him 2 years ago, it's like your friendship is the thing that and neither of us could get that, because it's like, well, we're just friends that have what we have. Right. And I think it's taken us some time to really grasp how special that is. And when you look at the history, you know, I think it was like 3 months into our friendship. I have no idea how it came up. It was 2002. And we start talking about gay marriage in the gym.
It was in the political spectrum.
Yeah, like we were talking about, you know, and this is at a time where gay marriage is, you know, it's being voted on for its legality. I mean, you got to remember, gay marriage doesn't become legal until 2011, 2010. So this is 2002. And Rodney and I came at it from very different points of view. And we end up having this conversation over the course of years, never with the intent to change the other person's mind, certainly with maybe some frustrations at time. But at the end of the day, we were just friends talking about ideas. We weren't ideas trying to find friends. And in that, we have just been able to navigate every bit of conversation because we ultimately have respect and compassion for one another in a way that, you know, we try to replicate with other people as well. And we just mutually give it to one another. And it's forged a friendship that has lasted. I mean, I live in Ohio. He lives in LA. I've lived in Chicago. He's lived in Indiana. Like, I've lived in New York and he's lived in, like, we've been all over the place, and we've still maintained the strength and core of what that friendship is. That's a pretty legit scroll bar, though.
It is. I was just like, oh, what's got a ticker? What? We got to upgrade, Keith. We got to upgrade.
Yeah.
That's what's
I think to the theme of Europe, of where we are, more than therapy. This is for me, the journey has been about largely accepting myself, so that I could accept our friendship and what we're trying to do. And trying to get people to see that compassion can just wash away so many of these issues. It's not about us, but our friendship can be the the hallmark or the thing that people could look at and be like, oh, I want that. Like, to your point, like a lot of people don't see where you are. People don't see this kind of friendship. And maybe even here, like it happens in LA, but I don't know if you see it a lot. I don't know if it's common, and I don't know if it's common in Cleveland. I would doubt where you are, Keith. It's
Not
Cleveland, or it's common. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And why not? Like, why isn't it? And there's a lot of answers to that.
If it speaks to the point when I was on your podcast, I mean, and just one of the, I guess the mantra of it, we have more in common than what we have different about us. And the only thing that separates us in most cases, as Keith and Rodney know, is the color of our skin. We judge each other from a distance just based on what we see. I see you from 360 yards out. I've already made a determination of who you are based on one thing. Mm-hmm. That same person you're looking at could have all the accolades in the world. And if their skin was just a different color, they would get that much more respect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's funny because we have a mentor. She's Black, and one of her best friends in the world is white. And she said to us one time, like, we've never even talked about race, and we're best friends. Right. So that was kind of one of those key moments to understand how special the friendship and relationship we have is. And, that bias, that judgment that causes us is just getting worse. Right. It's like all you have to do is say something, and then it's like, I know who you are, and
I know who you are.
Create this tension amongst them. And I mean, I'm not immune to the sinkhole of the psychological experience that is human nature, right? But we only hope that we can demonstrate that you don't have to live it. You can be more than your instincts sometimes.
Indeed. Regarding the things that we're seeing, I mean, it's like we're having more issues regarding race in any given time in my history on the planet. I've been here a little bit longer than y'all. What have y'all noticed? What trends are y'all seeing? Now, I know it's a lot different in LA than it is, what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's probably a lot different where you are than where I am, right?
Like, that's a whole nother episode.
I live in a 95% white suburb of Cleveland, which is 55% Black. And I see the blue ribbons go up on the flagpoles. What I see, at least from my perspective, there's this, I haven't actually been able to talk to anybody about this, even you, Rodney. There is this reflection of the moment that reminds me from a historical, not from a personal context, but from a historical context of the backlash of Reconstruction, right? When the KKK was fully formed, because there was this fear, this resentment, there's so much was more overt and so much more was rooted in this. Now it's voting security. Now it's supporting the police. Now it's all of these things that refuse to take a look and say, wow, the experience of a large of a large percentage of the population is just very different. And in that, we're unable to collectively see as a majority, well, maybe as a majority, but everybody, that, hey, we're not all living the same life, and we all have challenges, and some situations have created challenges around us. So can we at least understand that and have a conversation and go forward? And all of a sudden it has to become this, no, you're wrong and I'm right. And I'm going to anchor that on these things that actually distract from any meaningful conversation and movement. That's how I see it. I don't see it at a micro level very much, but I mean, you still do. I mean, you still see it with people who, refuse to accept, the realities of the world because it.
Well, I mean, Keith, you've seen it. You've seen it in the committee that you're on and the responses.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Right. I mean, you see it. It's just,
yeah.
It's the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Indeed.
What I realize, what's changed, the thing that I know that has changed is me. I grew up in Indianapolis. I remember the annual KKK rally that was approved on the Circle steps or in front of City Hall or whatever. So like, is it different now? I don't think it's ever gone away. I don't think it's different from 400 years ago. I think it's just, it looks different on the surface, and a lot of that has resurfaced. And then on the other hand, large corporations thought it financially prudent to say Black Lives Matter, even if it was just an Instagram post. They wouldn't have done that a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. It wasn't financially relevant to say anything about a Black life. So I don't know. And then things are happening, right? Like I think there've been a couple cities or municipalities that have at least attempted to pay reparations to Black folk. There are other conversations happening about it, but then for every conversation, there's probably, to Keith's point, 10x whiplash. There's still whiplash from having a Black president. There's whiplash from having even a female presidential hopeful, or a woman hopeful president. I think there's a lot of backlash from the established authority. So I don't know. Like, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a lot of the same and new.
Yeah, I think
that's a non-answer answer.
One of my favorite things, though, that, I mean, you just called it out, Rodney, that you've called out for a while, is that vast difference of business response, right? Like, it doesn't matter what a business actually thinks. The fact that they think it is economically more feasible for Nike to do a Colin Kaepernick ad campaign, which boosted their sales like 17% at the time. That type of economic response is the difference. Like, that is the fundamental. And I'm thinking that more from an optimistic standpoint. Companies coming out and having to do doing these diversity and inclusion exercises, giving voice to Black employees, really at least making an effort, because it is not economically feasible. Rodney, you've said it 100 times. If it were more economically feasible to come out and say Blue Lives Matter, businesses would do it.
That'd be what happened.
Right. Yeah. So I think that is, from a positive standpoint, at a macro level, I think one of the most astute observations that I take no claim to. That is 100% Rodney, at least in my life experience.
Which the other thing I'll add, because I want to ask you, Felipe, but the other thing I'll add is I have had in the last 7 months conversations in a large company that I work for that I would have never, ever, ever anticipated. Like, we had large format conversations about the talk that my parents have with me, and almost every Black parent has with their little brown children, about how to behave when interacting with law enforcement or authority in order to try and be safe. And I never would have expected to have that as a company call. Like, so I think that's positive. And it, probably, if 70 people were in the call, I probably had 5 reach out to me. So if 5 people were touched and learned about that experience and the pain that so many have felt, then that's moving forward. That's progress. And I think that's what gets tricky, is that progress doesn't look like we want it to usually, because we want it to be all 70. But what about you, Felipe? What are you seeing? What are you feeling?
Especially where you are.
Ooh, yeah, especially where I'm at. Durham, North Carolina. North Carolina, still part of the dirty. It's like when I first came here, let's say 2009, it just seemed like everybody, I worked in a rural community. So, I seen some things, but I seen that the work I did had an impact even past those racist impacts. You know what I'm saying? People who didn't want to work with a Black clinician because they thought that we were inferior or didn't have the best intentions. But getting past that, once they saw the investment, once they saw that there was no judgment on where they were as a person, that I came from a genuine stance to work with them to get them to the level which they could be considered well and in recovery. I find now a pull away from such. I find now that I see the people that I might have worked with in the past, are becoming more vocal regarding their racial stance, you know what I'm saying, that I've never seen before. I guess the best way to say it is previously it was very covert and now it's very overt, more so. It was almost like, we don't want you to be greater as a people because you would displace us. Almost like a fear of being displaced regarding equality. You don't want to be in these shoes because they're inferior shoes. It's a sad place to be. Why can't we all wear similar shoes? Why we all can't shine in Nike Jordans? Why we gotta wear Bobos over here while you wear what you wear? I don't understand the fear. What is fear? The acronym, they said. False evidence appearing real. Like your podcast says, we have more in common. And that means to me, we have more in common than what we have not in common. And that if we were on equal footing, imagine how much more common we would be. You know what I'm saying? If we have the same access to education, the same access to housing, the same access to the credit rating that gives us adequate housing, you know what I'm saying? No redlining, you know what I'm saying? No trying to suppress the vote. If we was all able to play at the table at the same time, I think that we would all realize the fact that we have more in common than we have differences, and we'll have such a much more economical balance. I think a lot less crime, more social equality across the board. I think we'll be a more peaceful planet. And in 2021, based on what I've seen in the 70s and 80s and 90s, I think we should be a lot further out than where we are regarding such. And it's really saddening and shameful in many aspects that we are where we are as a country right now, in my opinion.
There's
So yes, socially and technologically. I mean, where are my flying cars? Where's my teleportation? Where's
my real hoverboard?
I was promised things in movies, and I have not seen it. I want the great. No, but I kid. But you're right, socially, and I think you hit on something like the idea of more in common. Keith and I did not consciously do this, but this is very much what the conversations have turned into. Is there's this, I'm going to call it, dangerous thing that can happen where somebody feels a certain way. I feel like I've been wrong because I'm Black, and somebody might say, yeah, but we're the same. Like, we're the same, bro. Without acknowledging that, like, I just had something really shitty happen. And it's really important to see people like where they are and to acknowledge them where they are with whatever they're feeling and experiencing, and then come to that common ground. And that's essentially what we do in our conversations, is getting to know somebody and getting to just hear them. Like, people just want to be heard. You ain't got to agree with them. Like, just ask the question, sit back and be like, next question. Like, keep going, keep it moving, and common ground will find itself. But that validation part is super, super important. Like, skipping that step, I think, makes things worse.
Yeah. And it's funny. There's, you talk about fear and it appearing to be real, and we like certainty, right? As people. And so certainty creates this false idea that social constructs are certain. Capitalism is a good example. And, we can discuss the merits of free market capitalism and, what the ideal system is and how it all plays out. And there's so much complexity in that conversation. But at the end of the day, we have this belief that capitalism, democracy, they're certain, but they're certain under the expectations that we have them. And I think a lot of people have the expectation of zero sum, right? If you have, I don't. If I have, you don't, but that's okay. That scarcity mindset. And so what we have not framed appropriately at a macro level for the collective to really grasp is that if you're doing well and I'm doing well, we are collectively doing better. I might not be as amazing as there's really no scale because there is no scarcity. We, at a time in 2021 where we have more access to food, more access to medicine, you talk about, the nuances of that too, but we have more access to things, to information that allow us all to collectively grow. Yet we've built this system that is based on one set of individuals having more than another and separating versus joining. I saw a study a while ago, is that we as a society grow, like we accept disparity, because if you want to be a billionaire and you work hard to be a billionaire and I don't want to be a billionaire, then I don't have to be. But for you to be 8 billionaire and me to be unable to afford food because you're charging too much for yourself to be a billionaire, so basically on my back, I have a problem with that. We're okay with disparity, just not too much. And if we all just keep lifting that up, we're all going to be better for it. And so what you're seeing in the race conversation, in my opinion, is as a white man, it's been easier for me. And so now if it's making it easier for you, in essence, is it making it harder for me? And there is that fear that I'm somehow going to be, my life is going to be harder because yours is easier, rather than, why don't we just have an easier time together? Which though I do spark a question to both of you, because you said more covert versus overt, and I've heard this conversation a lot. What do you prefer? I mean, it's going to exist.
I prefer for it to just be out there so we can deal with it effectively.
Yeah.
I believe in, if there's a problem, there's an action plan to address the problem. Whether or not you want to come to the table to address the problem. Hey. So yeah, I'd rather it be, but like I said, I mean, it feels funny when it's just totally in your face that you would think, because you think in it being overt, you weren't so much aware of it, just going about your business. If you don't see it, you don't really pay attention to it. If it doesn't impact you, it doesn't. But then you see all the media coverage regarding it. You see all the stuff in person, you know what I'm saying? Like Rodney said, with the KKK representation on a yearly basis in his neighborhood, his environment. I mean, that has to be daunting. Something you would not think would happen in that part of the country. We expect it all day in North Carolina. We expect it all day in South Carolina. We don't expect that in the Midwest. Where they do that at? Well, obviously they did it where he was at. And it's scary that it's that prominent in this country. What they say, 100 and something years after slavery supposedly ended, 40-something, 60-something years after supposed civil rights was instituted, right? 100 years maybe after Jim Crow.
55.
Okay.
Yeah. I always like to put that out there because Jim Crow technically ended in 1965, right? And then the Voting Rights Act really kind of squashed it. Like, if you were born in the 50s, you were a teenager almost at that point, right? Like you're formative. So like, that's crazy. Like that's a generation. That's bonkers to me. Like almost just a half a century ago.
I would prefer for it to not exist, period. I don't like either, to be honest. I was just in North Carolina. Actually, I was in Outer Banks, and we flew into...
You didn't come see your boy. Oh, my goodness.
I didn't come see my boy. Traveling family. But we will make that happen, though.
That vacation.
We flew into Norfolk, and then drove down to the Banks. So, like, both in Virginia and in North Carolina, I saw Confederate flags like right off the freeway, the highway. I don't know what y'all call it out there. The street where you can go fast. That one.
Those highways.
I saw those Confederate flags. And yesterday we had a conversation with somebody about like the body's response to things. And like I'm driving, my daughter's sleeping in the back. I tensed up. And my wife would sleep too. And when she woke up, I was like, "Oh, you got to miss that nice Confederate flag welcoming us to this part of the South, or to the Confederacy." And she's like, "Is North Carolina Confederate?" I was like, "Interestingly enough, they weren't, and then they were." And it's just the feeling from that point on. Like I'm always on some kind of guard, but that heightened it, and so I don't like that feeling. Yes, I would rather know for safety, like, okay, like that dude's got a swastika on his forehead. I'm probably not gonna go talk to him. But like the covert is as dangerous. And I've had issues with that, and there's historical issues with that. So I don't know.
It's
and then Keith, you mentioned the scarcity. I want to point out that, like, while we talk about in the Western world and white, black, like if you go over to the East, Chinese, Japanese, like this happens. It's not just a white thing. Like, yes, Europe colonized much of the world. China and Japan like have some terrible issues with this. My family's from the Philippines. They've been colonized by everybody and their mama, and like tons of issues off of that. And this back to more in common. This is very much a human issue. Now, I experience it as a black man in the U.S., not as a right. So from a global context, this exists. It's colorism, all that is there.
It speaks to why take a moment, like why we are so passionate about compassion, like. Because it can be really, really hard. A friend of mine, and I'll use this story because I think it kind of softly represents the point, even though it's a heavy story, has a friend who was recently shot and killed in LA. And this friend of his used to be in gang. He used to be a banger, and he's tatted up and all of that stuff. Hasn't done it in 10 years. He now has 5 kids. He has prospects. My friend recently talked to him like a week prior to him dying about his hopes and his dreams and his aspirations of life that really changes the narrative of what you see on the surface. And the ability to universally, and I don't mean just for one person to give compassion. I don't mean for 2 people to give compassion. I mean for all of us to give compassion to each other in a way that we get a chance to not accept, acknowledge. Like Rodney said, people want to be heard. I don't have to accept you as someone, but we can still potentially, and we all have our limits, but if we give each other compassion for the human experience, I think about QAnon followers a lot. There is an appeal to the QAnon conspiracy that goes way beyond the data. And if you hear anybody who is a QAnon supporter, they will say, the best thing I get out of this is the community. Because they don't feel judged. They don't feel like they've been alienated and turned away by their family. And now they no longer have family because they're judged and criticized. No one wants to feel that. And that is a universal human existence unless you're a narcissist. Then you don't care. And the reality is, if we could all access a little bit more compassion for people, we would be better. You don't have to have compassion for a Nazi, right? If you don't want to, but if we have it for more people, we will heal the world. All of these things will fix themselves.
I mean, I'll go further and say, yeah, you should have compassion for a Nazi. Doesn't mean you like them. Doesn't mean you agree with them. Like, that's not what compassion's about. It's about the human experience. Like, we all go through shit, and we all have our issues. That's what it's about for me. But somebody just asked if I'm seeing these pop up. These are dope.
This is a dope format.
Should we field some questions? I saw Van's Van's comment about the flag. There's a topic.
The flag.
Yeah.
I think he was talking about the Confederate flag. Waving it.
Because I did say the Confederate flag.
Yeah, we're a little behind on the prior conversation.
Like I say with some people I speak with regarding this subject, it's like you hold dear to your heart this flag, this symbol, which history itself indicates it was associated with tyranny, with separating from the nation of America, with separating from basically, in some ways, domestic terrorists. If you really want to think about, the definition of what they did and what they tried to do,
tyrants or traitors. They were traitors.
Yeah, right. There you go. That's a great way to capture it.
That is the technical military term for what they were.
You pride yourself on not being American. You pride yourself on standing by. The flag is disgusting. You know what I'm saying? And yet the FBI never, ever designated anybody who associates themselves with that flag as a domestic threat, but purposely went after Black Lives Matter, purposely went after the Black Panthers and named them domestic threats.
Yep. I think all the white national, the 3%ers, they were just recently for the first time, even though it's been known for a long time that white nationalism is the number one threat, the number one terrorist threat to our country, not Al-Qaeda.
They said that recently?
What's that?
Yeah, like.
Oh yeah, no. This has been known for a long time. Like I posted a video on Facebook like 4 years ago about this. Like, yeah.
I know we know it. What did the FBI say?
No, the FBI has known it. They have designated them as as terrorist threats. I think maybe in the last 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was actually
okay. We didn't get that message down here. Thank you for bringing that to the table.
Yeah, no, they are officially domestic terrorists. Yes, who are treated with kid gloves when they storm the Capitol.
Facts. Let me get 10 feet from there and just say, "Hey, I'm gonna."
Yeah.
We live in interesting times, but I looked towards your relationship, and what your mission is regarding your podcast as a great investment in our future, something I want to model myself up, which gives me motivation to, be more open and try to elicit the change that I want to receive. I thank you for your endeavors. I thank you for, welcoming me into your podcast family on that episode. Your relationship is a great example of what I would like to have one day and that I once had when I was younger. It's funny how we get older. Some things peel away from us because of our cultural norms or social norms in our area. And I'm going to purposely reach out to my longtime friend that I lost a long time ago, look him up on Facebook or whatever, and see if I can locate him and just touch base and see what's what.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I want to thank you for being an example of the human spirit. Like Rodney and I were just having this conversation. There is nothing that is more human than survival. And other than and the only way we can survive, there's so many different ways. And you have done that. You've thrived and you've shown that through compassion, you can survive and make the world a better place. And if Felipe's episode just dropped July 15th. And that conversation, it is a great representation of that ideal. So thank you for being an example.
Thank you.
Definitely made me smile. And I just want to make a quick clarification, Van. I see you. Compassion is not soft and fluffy. It doesn't mean you have to be nice to people. It's not what it means. That's not what it's about from me. Me being compassionate towards a Nazi does not mean I'm trying to go shake their hand. Doesn't mean I'm trying to convert them. Doesn't mean I'm excusing anything that they've done. That's not it. There are people who are flat wrong. There are people who I believe are wrong, who may or may not be wrong. None of that matters, in my opinion. With compassion, it is about it is. I don't need to understand where they're coming from. I don't need to try to understand. I don't trying to understand where a Nazi comes from would be detrimental to my mental health. And I wouldn't do it. but I can understand that they're human and they probably went through some shit to get where they are. And that bothers me. Like that to me, that's sad. And that's it. That's where it ends for me. So, I just want Felipe, you're a gracious host, my guy.
You
my
really
guy,
are. Yeah.
you're a good host.
Hey,
like
One more
I'm taking notes
thing before I let you go. You've expanded your podcast into a new venture, consulting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
This guy is bringing it out. So when we talk about compassion, Rodney's right. Like, and there's a lot of amazing psychological study, and there's this one that I'll refer to and then pull this out. Like, there was a study done that just 40 words in a medical environment can change the direction of treatment for an individual. It can reduce their cost. It can reduce the cost that it takes from the hospital standpoint. It can there's so many positive financial benefits and experiential benefits from 40 words that a doctor can give to a patient. I don't have all the words memorized, but it's something to the effect of that we're in this together, right? I understand that you're going through something. This is not empathy. It is not necessarily, I understand what you're going through. I just understand you're going through something. I have the ability to affect how you experience that over the next 6 months, year, whatever the case may be. And by, and this is a YouTube video, but by doing these 40 words, it is amazingly valuable both to an organization and the people. Our thought process, because we know that compassion can heal the world, is that if we all learn about it and what compassion actually is, what it looks like, beyond the religious component of it, which there's a reason religion anchors on compassion in many ways, beyond to Van's point, the feel good, like, that warm, fuzzy compassion, like what it actually is and what it can do for yourself, because compassion is the one thing you can give to others and to yourself, and towards others. As an organization, if you have an environment that is promoting compassion between employees, from bosses to employees, you are going to increase your profits. Your people are going to be happier. They're going to be seen, heard, and valued more. And as a result, your organization is going to thrive. So what we do, and we've boiled this down to a 4-step MORE approach, that's MORE. If we boil it down to how we actually give compassion, then you as an organization have the ability to implement that on a regular basis and change the way your organization operates for your people. So that's what we're bringing to companies.
It very much fits into this world of the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion conversations that are happening. We very much fit into the inclusion part of the conversation to say, that there are some tangible things you can do to address inclusion, left, right, and center, because everybody feels like, it's just them being excluded. And there's a lot of things, there are some very tangible things that can be done, which are then going to benefit your diversity efforts, if you have them, or if you want to have them, or if you want to talk about equity. But if you don't start with some kind of a base, some kind of a foundation, you don't get to that table. And somebody like me is going to say something like, like white fragility, or, you're in your feelings about this, but here are the facts. And somebody's not going to be able to handle that. And there's not going to be a framework for us to get together on it. So that's what we build, is that framework, that scaffolding.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all that you do, all that you've done, all that you will continue to do. 2 last questions.
Yes.
Give me a recommendation for a book.
Oh. This is a question we ask every guest.
Go.
It's awesome. Rodney, you go first. You might have.
Oh, you're just gonna.
I'm gonna throw you out there. Yeah.
Dang. Just one. If it's
a couple, what I'm saying, I just need some. I need to add some things to my library.
Okay. I'm gonna give 3. The Alchemist.
Okay. That's a good one.
The Power of Now.
Power of Now.
And Power
Eckhart
of Now.
Tolle. Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle. And I'm cheating. This is a series, but the Misborn Saga. It's a fantasy sci-fi novel that is legit, brah. If you're a nerd like me,
I'm a blurred, but yeah, that's what's up.
blurt it out. Let's go.
I am going to add, because Rodney, I mean, Power of Now for sure, and right in there, the biology of belief. Which is an exceptional look at the epigenetics and the environment on our influence on our DNA. And then nonviolent communication, just in the spirit of this ecosystem that we're talking about. Nonviolent communications are a really, really good book.
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna put those in the show notes. I definitely want to get up on some of that. And, any artists you're looking for, somebody we should listen to, something we should add to our playlist. You got any music you recommending? Especially you being out west. Y'all exposed to some things we don't see out here unless we know about them on Spotify.
I'm not up to... I don't really I honestly don't listen to a lot with words these days. Okay. I'm listening. I got a lo-fi hip hop stream playing. The Chill Cow channel, Chill Cow playlist on YouTube and on Spotify is rocking a lot for me because I'm trying to be in a creative and a thinking space a lot, and I just I love me like some Kendrick, but I'll be in the Kendrick and not in what I'm trying to create. So that's where I'm at these days.
Great point. The lo-fi playlists are the truth. Yeah.
I do not listen to music anymore. However, I know it's books, podcasts, and movies these days. But I have to give a shout out to a guest of ours, Isabel Stillman, who was
brain. Let's go.
off of Spotify. She couldn't. The whole thing around Spotify and indie artists and all this other stuff. But she can be found. Her album is exceptional. I listen to that album all the time. Isabel Stillman, she's trying to make it. She's really trying to build it up, and I love her music. So I got to give a shout out to Isabel.
Okay, I'll check that out. Well, thank you, Rodney and Keith, for appearing on the More Than Therapy. Please, listeners, friends, family, associates, peers, subscribers, please go and subscribe to the More in Common podcast. In fact, if you have to delete a podcast to subscribe to a podcast, feel free to delete mine to add theirs because they are just that good. Don't
do that.
No, you don't have to do that, but just in case that's the scenario.
I appreciate the sentiment. I'm going to accept that as a compliment graciously. And and I will throw out there, like, if you ever want to hit us up, we are accessible. Our email, you can hit us up in the DMs.
As the kids say, our DMs are open.
There you go.
So, and Kalila, I hope I said that right. Lo-fi playlist is just on the comments. A lo-fi playlist. So it's just if you go to YouTube and type in Chilled Cow and then lo-fi, exactly how you typed it, lo-fi playlist, your mind will be blown and opened all at the same time as you're regaled with musical greatness. That just expands your capability.
It's like hip hop with jazz influences. Like Rodney said, it doesn't have words in it, so it doesn't allow the permutation of people's opinions and concepts. It's just music. And
there's like
3 and 4.
Anything that you love has probably been turned into a lo-fi version. So if you think of a song you like type it in lo-fi, and somebody's probably made it.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Rodney and Keith of the More in Common podcast. Don't forget to hit them up at moreinpodcast.net. Where's that band at?
More in Common, ENT.com.
www.ent.com. And you can hit up all their applications to all the different podcast ways to listen to the podcast. I listen to them on Amazon and Spotify. You know what I'm saying? Amazon on my Alexa, Spotify on my phone. And that's what's up. And that concludes another episode of More Than Therapy podcast. Be well, be great.